Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. As any of you that have been long-term listeners of mine know, I'm very interested in cutting-edge, innovative science. And I want to introduce you tonight to Dr. Kevin Hewitt. He is a professor of physics and atmospheric science at Dalhousie University in Halifax, Nova Scotia. And he runs something called the Hewitt Bio-Nanophonics Lab. I pronounced that wrong. I apologize, at Dalhousie University. He's an expert in the development of molecular imaging as a diagnostic tool. He's measuring fat in liver prior to organ transplant, and he's working on nanoparticle probe for cancer imaging treatments. How are you? Welcome to my show, Kevin.
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Brian. Look forward to the conversation.
So tell me what Hewitt, I pronounced it wrong, bio-nanophotonics? What is that?
So we employ light scattering techniques to try and identify biomarkers of disease. And one of our projects involves using nanoparticles to enhance the scattered light, or in other words, enhance the amount of information that we can detect from biological organs and tissues. So in particular, we have a really exciting project now, which is very close to the commercialization stage, the exciting commercialization stage, in which we can detect the fat content of various organs. But our first organ of interest is the liver. The fat
What's
content.
the benefit of finding out what the fat content of a liver is?
So the fat content is an important indicator of whether the liver can be transplanted. And presently, the technique of determining that fat content is a simple visual inspection. That is, looking at the organ, seeing how yellowish it is, how stiff it is, and so transplant surgeons use that approach. As you can understand, it's not as accurate as some other techniques, but it's because you're retrieving the organs in facilities outside of hospitals on occasion. And the gold standard technique may not be available, that is liver biopsy. So our solution to that problem of lack of accuracy is to develop this light scattering technique, this medical diagnostic tool that could basically quantify the amount of fat within seconds, giving the surgeons immediate indication of the fat content.
And this light scattering technique is used in what? In an MRI or something?
So it's we're developing a handheld probe that would basically shine laser light through a fiber optic onto the liver or the organ. And there's a weak amount of light that's scattered. In fact, anytime somebody does a talk and points a laser pointer at a wall or anything, they're doing a Raman scattering experiment. They just don't know it. The light that's scattered, though, is scattered at different wavelengths, longer wavelengths. So in other words, that scattered light gives you information about it's a fingerprint of the area that's illuminated. So if you had on special glasses that would block the laser light, let's say it's green, and your eyes were as sensitive as the most sensitive CCD detectors, you would see basically a mixture of colors. And if you put on those glasses a grating, like you'd see, on the backside of a CD, when you put a CD in light, you see the spectrum of colors. So a Raman scanner experiment basically provides that unique fingerprint through the set of colors that are scattered. So it's like a spectral barcode.
So I apologize. Let's go through this slowly. So you're shining a light at a liver in the body, or are you cutting the body open first?
So this would be someone who's deceased, and the surgeon's assessing whether the liver should be transplanted.
Okay, so you've cut the body open and you're looking at the liver, and you're now shining a light at the liver, and you're saying that the light bounces back in a scatter such that it creates a signature for that liver and tells you how much fat is in the liver. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly, you got it.
Okay.
Exactly.
And what is capturing the reflected light?
So the scattered light is captured by these photodiodes, which convert light into an electrical signal or voltage. And we measure that voltage. And the higher that voltage is, the higher the fat content.
Fascinating. And you were saying you were introducing nanoparticles. What's the role of the nanoparticles that you're introducing?
So that's a separate project altogether. We do not need to introduce nanoparticles to observe the fat content. But when we, in this separate project, when you're interested in biomarkers that are even, smaller in quantity, you need those nanoparticles to enhance the scattered light.
And how do you introduce the biomarkers into how do you introduce the nanoparticles into whatever you're looking for?
So you can do it in several ways, but simple injection into your bloodstream would allow for the particles to circulate. And if you basically coat those particles with a ligand like epidermal growth factor, which is a hormone. When that hormone binds to your cells, it causes your cells to grow and divide. So we coat the nanoparticles in that hormone, and that means your body thinks it's already a part of it, and it allows the nanoparticles to go to the site of interest, and then you locate, you can heat those particles. That's one of the advantages of using nanoparticles as well. If you illuminate with higher intensity light, and let's say those particles were embedded in cancerous tissue, then you can locate it with using low intensity laser light, and then that region can be heated by just increasing the laser intensity. So
you're thinking that the introduction of the nanoparticles into different organs or tissues, and the combination of the laser light reflecting off of that and scattering and being captured by your device is going to do what to find cancer more efficiently?
Yes. In fact, and it's applicable to basically cancers of the gastrointestinal tract, because laser light has a limited penetration. So what can happen is, the individual can also drink a solution containing nanoparticles. If those particles have something on them that will bind to a region that's characteristic of cancer, then as you then introduce the fiber optic probe and shine the light going down the gastrointestinal tract, you can then identify where there's, larger light scattering effects, and then you'll know where the cancer is located. So that's one application.
This is fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing this with us. We're going to take a break for some messages and come back more with Dr. Kevin Hewitt from Dalhousie University, talking about light lasers and diagnosing the amount of fat in livers so that we can better understand which livers can be transplanted, and also potentially using this along with nanoparticles to image for cancer. Sounds fascinating. Let's take a break, and we'll be back in just a minute. Stay with us.
Okay.
Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. I've got the pleasure tonight of introducing you to Kevin Hewitt. He's a professor at Dalhousie University in the science area, and he's got just an unbelievable resume of experience. He's in the Department of Physics and Atmospheric Science, which is kind of interesting, given what he's been talking about. He's got a physics prize from the University of Toronto, Scarborough campus. He's got an NSERC Undergraduate Student Research Award. He's got a Canada Unlimited Sidney Hogg Memorial Graduate Scholarship Award. He graduated with a graduate fellowship from Simon Fraser University Graduate Research Scholarship, a Caribbean Educational and Cultural Association Scholarship, a Sidney Hogg Memorial Graduate Scholarship, a Youth Committee Service Award, an NSERC Industrial Research Fellowship, a Nova Scotia Discovery Centre Science Champion finalist, and the Harry Jerome Award for Professional Excellence. Wow, that's a lot of accolades. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Where were you born? I presume you went to U of T and Simon Fraser. Tell me a little bit about your education.
Sure. I was actually born in the UK, in London, England. And 8 months after, I went back home to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. That's where my family is from. And then joined my mother in Toronto when I was 10 years old. My mom was part of that generation that went to the UK, the Windrush generation, when the UK was looking for nurses when they rolled out the National Health Service. So I spent 10 years with my grandmother in the Caribbean in St. Vincent before coming and joining my mother in Toronto. Then after University of Toronto, I went out to Simon Fraser for graduate work, and then was lured to Dalhousie University in Halifax.
And the graduate work was in what?
In physics.
In physics at both U of T and Simon Fraser?
That's right. And I also did a biology degree at U of T, so combined disciplines of biology and physics.
And the Caribbean Educational and Cultural Association Scholarship, how did you win that?
Well, that was a community award, and it was given for my community service and my academic work, right, as a graduate student. So I've always tried to give back to the community. I feel it's it's an obligation we all have, and in the end, if you give back to the community, you receive a lot more than you've given. So that's been a trend throughout my life.
It's a great attitude. Thank you for that. And is that why you won the Harry Jerome Award for Professional Excellence?
So that award was based on a program that I established in 2003, the Imhotep's Legacy Academy. So it's a science, technology, engineering, and math, or STEM outreach program. that encourages African Canadians, African Nova Scotians into the field. It was a labor of love, started in 2003 with a handful of students down the office, down at a lab from my office, and then grew into now a provincial program with hundreds of students engaged each year across the province. So that program has had a huge impact on the number of African Canadians entering Dalhousie and other post-secondary institutions in engineering, science, math, and so on. So
I understand it's one of your passions to inspire younger African Canadians to get involved in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, education, and occupations. And it's something you've been working hard for. Is that true?
That is true. It's it's basically the result of the fact that as I went through my physics degree, there was that sense of isolation. As the only Black student in almost all my classes, and not seeing the professors that looked like me. And I remember also walking along the corridors of the University of Toronto, seeing all of the Nobel Prize winners' pictures for physics displayed, and seeing none again who were Black. So it's been my passion to change that, to change the face of physics in Canada. And I've worked with, more recently, the Canadian Association of Physicists and a wonderful graduate student at University of Toronto, Anastasia Smolina, to conduct the first survey, diversity survey of the physics community, and to track the changes over time in order to understand how we can increase the enrollment of groups that have been traditionally underrepresented.
Why do you think that is? What causes it? In the last year, particularly last year, when Black Lives Matter was really an issue because of what was happening in the United States. I had a couple of people on my show that said that too often, and I'm talking about probably Mississauga and Brampton, so maybe not relevant to Nova Scotia, maybe, I'm not sure. But in Mississauga and Brampton, that there were too many guidance counselors, teachers and principals, administrators that tried to stream too many African Canadians to general programs and away from more academically rigorous programs, and discourage them from trying to go to university, or trying to go to university in overly competitive, overly demanding programs like engineering. And then I also interviewed a very successful Black entrepreneur who in Toronto, who came from Jamaica. And he said, the biggest difference in his life was that he was educated in Jamaica, where it was believed that Black people could accomplish anything. And it wasn't until he came to Toronto where he got, a racist or a racialized attitude that suggested that in any way, shape, or form, African Americans, African Canadians couldn't achieve everything. And so he was very supportive of Black-only education. Tell me how you come down on those two issues.
I agree wholeheartedly with the views you just expressed. I came to Canada having, had my education in St. Vincent. I could see around me, as the saying goes, the head cook and bottle washer looked like me. So I didn't have that barrier or perception that I, could not achieve, because, as they say, you can, if you can see others that look like you, then you too can believe you can achieve those professions. So I also encountered racism as soon as I came to Canada in the education system. I was immediately put back a grade And luckily, when I was at St. Vincent, I had actually skipped a grade. Um, so, and the attitudes at that time, the use of the N-word and so on. It was only because of the confidence, I think, that I had from those very first formative years in the Caribbean, and secondly, the support of my mother that allowed me to succeed. And when you mentioned streaming, when I was in Toronto, they also tried to stream me into those lower level courses, and my mother would have none of it. So she was at the school emphasizing that my son, um, is able to compete with the best. So it's that support as well that was really critical for me to be able to get to the place I am today. It's the confidence that I had growing up in the Caribbean, and also, my mother's defense while we were in Canada.
And you said that your mother is a nurse, so she had academic training as well?
She did. She actually completed her BSc later in life, once she had been a nurse for some time, and used that to basically enter some of the senior leadership roles in Toronto at Toronto Hospital. So she emphasized education, hard work, always giving back to your community and family. Those four things I carry with me, and I try to pass on to my own kids, my own four kids. It's yeah. So my mother was integral to everything that I am today.
And where was her education? Was it in the Caribbean or in Toronto?
So she was educated in the Caribbean, and then went to the UK to train to be a nurse. But again, when she came to the UK, discrimination on the basis of race was not outlawed at that time. And so that's one of the reasons, she left the UK to come to Canada. And she didn't bring us with her because at the time the Canadian government wanted, individuals without dependents to join them. So I'm part of a generation that grew up with our grandparents or aunts in the Caribbean. And then finally, when the borders were open, we were able to reunite with our mother. So that story, a number of my contemporaries have also experienced.
Do you have siblings?
I have three siblings I grew up with, and five as well. Have sisters who are in the UK and the US. So it's a big group.
And has your mother's attitudes rubbed off on them as well? Have they pursued academic pursuits?
Yes, all of my siblings, have gone through and done well. My eldest sister, is in banking. My brother, my second youngest brother, is in business, and my youngest brother actually was with the RCMP and then became a professor at Durham College. So Yeah.
Sounds like I want to interview your mom and find out what the secrets are. But let's come back to the 4 secrets. So, education, hard work, give back to your community and family. Was that what it was?
That's what it was. Yeah.
Education, hard work, give back to your community and family.
Uh, those things really help drive, by giving back to the community, everybody's lifted up, and family is important, supporting one another, because we all face difficulty at one point or another in our lives. And also, family was there to celebrate your achievement, to also fight on your behalf, as I mentioned with the streaming issue. Um, and the hard work has to always be there. You have to put in the time, as I forget his name now. He talked about the 10,000 hours.
Malcolm Gladwell,
Malcolm
10,000
Gladwell.
hours.
Yes. So.
But it sounds to me that some of the other secrets to your success were this time in an environment where you could see people that looked like you be successful, and whether that is a Black-only school, or whether it's the fact that you had your formative years in the Caribbean, or whether it was, the mentorship that you're applying through this STEM programs, encouraging African Canadians to think about STEM occupations. There seems to be something there that too often we don't have or not we, but African Canadians don't have those examples, those images, those mentors that look like them, that inspire them. And so that's one. And so I want to ask you about this idea of Black-only education. For a long period of time, some people thought that females that wanted to be successful should go to girls-only education, girls-only schools for a while. Some people have a very different point of view that says that doesn't work, and they don't become as successful in society if they spend all their formative years in high school with only females. And then the second thing is this fight against this institutionalized attitude, which may be racist, or maybe something else, I'm not sure, but that streams too many African Canadians out of academic programs and into general programs. And probably sometimes they would justify it based on that they're going to be more successful that way, they won't be disappointed. But it sounds like too often in cases like yours, it's racist. Tell me about those two issues. The issue of, does Black-only education make sense? And what do we do about this streaming issue? How do we combat it?
Sure. Let me tackle the second one first. I believe Ontario has now eliminated streaming from its curriculum. That obviously, is one step in the right direction, but it requires teachers who, are invested, fully invested in, the students in the classroom, with different abilities, and helping them. Around the Black-only schools, I would say I'm more in favor of an immersion type model. So French immersion, you have a cohort within a school that also has English instruction. So there's a model being rolled out successfully in Nova Scotia. It's called the Afrocentric Cohort model at Auburn High School, led by a wonderful principal, African Nova Scotian Karen Hudson. So within this cohort model, you have a group of African Nova Scotian students who go through as a cohort. So they're in math and other classes together from grade 10 through to 12. Thus far, in the first 3 years, pilot started 3 years ago. There's been 100% graduation rate and a lot of success with regard to, interest in STEM. There is a space for Black-only schools, but I would say an immersion model where the students are also exposed to others is probably the best way, because there's a lot of learning that goes on inside the classroom, but there's a great deal of learning that goes on outside the classroom when you mix different cultures. That's true, in the post-secondary sector, as it probably is in the high school sector. So that mixing with other cultures, we have a diverse community in Canada and Toronto and elsewhere. That rich diversity, I think, is helpful. So you need both, basically the best of both worlds with that cohort model.
Fascinating. And I think some excellent suggestions. We're chatting tonight with Dr. Kevin Hewitt. He is a professor of physics and atmospheric science at Dalhousie University in Halifax, Nova Scotia. We're going to take a break for some messages and come back more with Kevin in just a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. I'm really enjoying my conversation tonight with Dr. Kevin Hewitt. He's a professor of physics and atmospheric science at Dalhousie University in Halifax, Nova Scotia. He has an undergraduate degree from University of Toronto Scarborough campus. He then went out to Simon Fraser University and got his graduate degree, and then joined Dalhousie University, where he specializes in, I'm going to get this wrong again, bio-nanophotonics lab. And he's got some interesting activities. One that he's using light lasers shined on livers in cadavers, people that have passed away, to determine how much fat is in those livers, such that he can more efficiently, more effectively determine which livers are ripe for liver transplants. I've had a doctor, some close association with this, because a person that I worked for and I was quite close to was on the liver transplant schedule for a long period of time, and it was a real challenge getting him the liver, and it was a real rush to get him to the liver once he finally got to the top of the list, and a compatible liver was identified. So I understand the urgency of that. And then just recently I went for a colonoscopy. I know that's not something that you typically share publicly, but it sounds like this procedure that you're using for the gastrointestinal testing is going to be what, a replacement for colonoscopies. Is that correct?
Well, it would be an additional source of information about that. As you do the colonoscopy, you can look at fluorescence, you can look at this light scattering technique called Raman spectroscopy, and they can all be coupled through that fiber optic that's involved in colonoscopy. So you're basically gathering a bit more information about the gastrointestinal wall, and so it's basically an additional tool. You would add a laser to the current setup, as well as, I mentioned earlier, that very sensitive photodetectors in order to detect that very weak light scattering.
So let's go back to sort of basic principles, if we could, and maybe you can explain to us all how this works. So, I think lots of us have had some experience with low intensity lasers for acne, where low intensity lasers have been used to try to do something to cosmetically improve acne. I understand that low intensity lasers have been used for things like foot ulcers and wounds and things like this. You're now using lasers. Are they low intensity lasers? Like, explain what they are. And I've heard different things about blue light versus red light versus what what portion of the light spectrum are you using? And what's the benefit of scattering it? Because in some of these low intensity light laser applications, I think what they're doing is the opposite of scattering it. They're focusing it, aren't they? So explain to us all a little bit about lasers, light spectrum, scatter versus focus.
Sure. So the intensity of the beams that we're using are quite low. Let's say around about 30 milliwatts. So very low intensity, low enough intensity that will not cause burning. If you had a high power laser, of course, focused onto your skin, that would burn your skin. So we're basically operating at below that level. So that the light that's incident onto your skin, in our application, we're looking at the light that's scattered at longer wavelengths. So as the photons hit your skin, let's say one of those photons that are scattered at this longer wavelength, whereas a million others are scattered at the same wavelength as the incident light. So let's say it was a green laser, 10 million green photons are scattered, whereas only one photon is scattered at, let's say, a longer wavelength being yellow, for example. So we need to basically eliminate those million photons at those million green photons and detect that yellow photon, because that yellow photon comes about because of interaction with vibrations in the system, in your skin. So by each there'll be a set of wavelengths that are scattered, and that color spectrum will be an indication of the type of material in the illuminated area. So that's what we're trying to discern, and that's why we need highly sensitive detectors. And so it's a fingerprint. As you shine it along, you can quantify, the constituents in your skin. If you're looking for, let's say, proteins, or other constituents, we know through many decades of research what the fingerprint is for different biochemicals. So in so doing, it's a great identification tool, and it's only been used more recently because of the development of more sensitive detectors, and we also have to use longer wavelengths because so into the near infrared, into the red, the infrared, because if you use shorter wavelength like blue, it doesn't penetrate as deeply. You can do this experiment at home. Take, a red or blue light, shine it at your finger, and look at the other, let's say on the nail side, and you'll see that the red light makes it through a lot more than the blue. So
Really?
that's why
Why is that? Why does the red go through and the blue not?
So the shorter wavelength is scattered more at very high angles, and that's when you see the blue of the sky and the red of the sunset. That's the same effect happening. The red, when the sun is low in the sky, the light rays coming towards your eyes are transiting through the thick atmosphere. You don't see the blue in that case. You see the red because the blue is scattered away.
So the blue is scattered away. That's interesting. I always thought it was because the atmosphere was thicker and therefore scattering the red. But you're saying it's the opposite. The blue is scattered.
So the blue is scattered at much higher angles than the red, and that leads to the blue sky and red sunset. A very interesting experiment would be to take a container of water, add a little bit of this cleaning agent. It's slipping my mind now. Anyway, to make the water a bit cloudy, and then shine some light through it from the bottom. And you'll see at the side sort of a bluish tinge. And if you look straight down into the container, you see a reddish tinge. So that's a great experiment showing you those small cleaning particles are doing the same thing as the atmosphere.
They're scattering the blue and allowing the red to go straight.
Yeah.
Fascinating. That's interesting. And where are you from a commercialization standpoint?
We are just on the cusp of creating, this is a new field for me. It's my first venture into the innovation and entrepreneurship landscape. So we're just on the cusp of creating our MVP, which is the minimum viable product. And so I just had a conversation earlier today with a device manufacturer going through the development of that handheld probe. And of course, it has to pass Health Canada approval. We have many early adopters, transplant surgeons in the Netherlands and elsewhere who are ready to utilize this tool, and slowly over time we'll build a database showing its continued efficacy. But thus far, we've shown that it quantifies fat quite accurately over a very short time frame, just a few seconds. So it's an exciting, this business venture is very different from my, I've been trained in the business field. So it's been an interesting experience. My students have been a part of these, what's called sandboxes, 2 programs called Lab to Market and Ready to Launch. These are excellent programs in which students engage with those who have extensive experience at commercialization. So in a few years,
Well, you're going to have to come back in a few years and tell us a bit more about it. I have taken a couple of biotech companies and device companies to the markets and raised money for them. And I teach a course in corporate finance at the DeGroote School of Business on financing early stage life science companies. So maybe we could have another conversation at some point.
Indeed.
We're chatting tonight with Dr. Kevin Hewitt. He is a professor at Dalhousie University. We're going to take a break and come back with some concluding comments in just a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. I love meeting scientists that have got great new ideas that are going to radically revolutionize, innovate, ideate, do whatever to help us. And Dr. Kevin Hewitt, who is a professor at Dalhousie University, is one of those individuals. He's working on some fascinating science that can determine the fat content in livers, such that we can better determine whether or not they're appropriate for transplant. And he's also working on lasers that can, in the gastrointestinal system, figure out whether there's cancer there. And so, working on some really fascinating stuff using low intensity light lasers and scattering them and capturing them with a device. It just sounds almost like Star Trek and the tricorder that Dr. What was his name? I can't remember her name.
Spock.
No, it wasn't Spock. It was the doctor that
yes.
Dr. McCoy that
Yes.
would shine a little tricorder at whatever it's called at people and figure out what was wrong with them. Sounds like that's what you're doing. But you're also really making a change in people's lives, particularly in, I presume, Nova Scotia, but I think, across Canada, in regards to African Canadians being more involved in science, technology, engineering, and math. And we've talked a little bit about that. And I understand you've also spoken about something called the Fairness Doctrine. Tell us about the Fairness Doctrine and what you spoke about.
Thanks, Brian. I really have, for most of my life, been involved in trying to affect change, trying to bring those who are not at the table, bring them back to the table to be able to contribute to this great country. We all do better if we bring those on board who have been excluded. So that's been my life work, and I sum it up by saying we have to be fair. We have to apply Fairness Doctrine to everything that we do. So one may, characterize it as equity, diversity, and inclusion, and I just call it pure and simple fairness, recognizing the barriers that some have faced, historic, present-day barriers. How do we eliminate those barriers? That's been the focus of the programs I've created with others, and also, the way in which I think our country can become more innovative, because we know, diverse groups make better decisions, and so we basically have to bring more of those folks to the table. In my role as Chair Senate, I have been, we've changed the face of who sits around that table. And as a result, we've seen some amazing outcomes. Those diverse voices have led to the introduction of new programs. So I think that the process is difficult, but in the end, the outcomes are so much better.
It says here that you pride yourself on not being a status quo leader. What does that mean?
So I have experienced the system, of course, and as somebody who, at points felt excluded from that system, when I, came into the position where I could influence changes to that system, I, took those steps. The status quo is not working for many people, is not working for many people. So we have to overturn the status quo, but we have to do it in a thoughtful, logical way. And so by having those who have been outside the system within it, they can identify the gaps and offer solutions. In innovative inclusion, sometimes those solutions may not work. And it's in fact a signature of innovation that people are trying new things, and some of them fail. You have to be honest when it does fail and learn those lessons and try something new. But if we're never failing, then we're actually never innovating.
Never failing, never innovating. Dr. Kevin Hewitt, thank you so much, professor at Dalhousie University innovator, and mentor and inspirer to lots of people. Thank you so much for what you do, both for our health, but also what you do for our youth and inspiring them. Thank you so much for joining us. That's our show for tonight, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'm on every Monday through Friday at 6 o'clock on 960 AM. You can stream me online at www.960am.ca, and you can get all my podcasts and videocasts on briancrombie.com, YouTube, and anywhere podcasts are available. Good night, everybody.